But then again, that inconsistency is perhaps best demonstrated by the way that Trump moves on the timeline. On the one hand, sober minds recognize that Iran still maintains all the leverage by controlling the Strait of Hormuz. Donald Trump needs to open the Strait of Hormuz. And instead, he has decided to add a second blockade to the Strait of Hormuz, making it seem as though America has the upper hand in these conversations. Behind closed doors, they're begging the Iranians to get to the ceasefire table and negotiate with the Americans. But in public, they're doing this. They're doing a whole lot of this. I told you. Let's move to Iran. Situation monitoring. And where the ceasefire talks are right now.
Be a pivotal moment in the war with Iran. The 2-week ceasefire between the U.S. and Iran was expected to expire tonight, but it appears President Trump may have pushed back the deadline to
Vance trip put on hold. Uh-oh. What happened? Everyone was saying is a definite.
So this comes as Vice President J.D. Vance is expected in Pakistan for another round of peace talks. So here's a question. Will they happen? Nancy Cordes is at the White House. Nancy, good morning to you. So many conflicting messages and the stakes are so high. What can you tell us?
Yeah, good morning, Gail. Everything feels a little up in the air this morning with both sides talking tough right now with this ceasefire about to end. President Trump is saying if there's no deal, quote, lots of bombs start going off. And the Iranians are saying they want the U.S. to release a ship it seized over the weekend, with a senior commander saying just this morning that there will be an immediate and decisive response to any aggression from the U.S.
It's very close to being over.
In an evening radio interview, President Trump claimed the Iranians are coming to the table.
And if they don't, they're going to see problems like they've never seen before.
But earlier, Iran's parliamentary speaker said, "We do not accept negotiations under the shadow of threats. We have prepared to reveal new cards on the battlefield."
We have not reached an agreement.
Vice President J.D. Vance, who led the first round of talks in Pakistan, is poised to head there again for round two. But even that caused confusion Monday, with President Trump telling one news outlet that Vance was heading over now, then telling another that Vance would leave later in the day. But this morning, Vance still woke up in Washington.
No plan, no strategy, no clear objectives.
All of it providing more fodder for Democrats.
A big part of the problem right now, particularly as it relates to skyrocketing gas prices, is Donald Trump's reckless and costly war of choice.
On Monday, Trump rejected his energy secretary's estimate that
God, thank God I just got back as my sexy goat, my sexy king, the sexual panther, the lion himself, Hakeem Jeffries, was on screen. Thank God. Vance has paused the trip to Pakistan for Iran talks. Source said, as Trump discussed with his aides the possibility of canceling the trip altogether, Vance could still go to Islamabad even this evening, but for right now, travel isn't happening. Tasnim is reporting Iran is not going to Pakistan. No prospect of negotiations at this moment. Iranian official tells Jeremy Scahill that as of this moment, 3:38 p.m. Eastern Time, Iran won't attend a new round of talks. Officials say Pakistan told Iran and Trump will lift the naval blockade in the final hours of the ceasefire. Officials say Pakistan told Iran that Trump will lift the naval blockade in the final hours of the ceasefire. If that happens and ceasefire is extended, new talks could happen Thursday. Okay, it's a real, I would say, initially I would have said this is a Mexican standoff. But I guess now it's a Pakistani standoff, okay? That's what it is. That's what it is. Because Iran has made their demands very clear. Lift the American naval blockade. If you don't do this, no talks. America, on the other hand, wants to max out on the victory, okay? They want to max out on how victorious they've been so far, how they've dominated Iran, except the reality, Pakistan standoff was right there. Fuck. God damn it. You're right. It's a Pakistan standoff. Pakistan Zindabad. God damn it. You're right. Son of a bitch. Okay. We just reversed it. That's what now I want you to imagine I said it's a real Pakistan standoff. Okay. Sounds too much like you're just saying the P word followed by standoff. Okay, calm down. Is Pakistan culture inherently parasocial? I don't know, but I have a parasocial relationship with the nation state of Pakistan. Wow, grape. Yeah, Pakistan is at the table. Pakistan is the table. Islamabad is now Islamagud. I love Pakistan. I will sacrifice my life for Pakistan. Just play the video? No. I live for the video. Okay. Iran will not be showing up for the talks. Iran's decision not to attend the meeting in Pakistan on Wednesday is final, according to Tasnim News Agency, the IRGC affiliated media. Now, like I said, a real Pakistan off. Iran ceasefire ends in 3 hours, but Trump says it expires tomorrow. Ceasefire will be over in around 3 hours and 30 minutes, according to Iran. UAE is on their deathbed, asking for a currency line. They can't sustain any more missiles. Listen, as much as it hurts me as a Turk to see Turkey fall from grace and no longer be the table or at the table, my life for Pakistan. Okay, Pakistan is the table. Islamabad is now officially the table.
Gas prices likely won't drop below $3 a gallon until next year. I think he's wrong on that, Trump said. Totally wrong.
You're going to see prices drop. You're going to see energy come down like you've never seen it before. All these things are going to happen.
But most economists actually agree with the energy secretary. In fact, the government's own estimates project that gas is not going to go back below $3 a gallon until at least 2027, Gail.
Everybody's feeling it when you go to gas up your car.
Vice President J.D. Vance is reportedly set to head to Pakistan today for a new round of peace talks with Iran.
Right. I say Pakistan, you say Pakistan. Yeah.
Lawrence dated a girl from there, and she said you have to say Pakistan.
Right. Pakistan.
But
Oh my God. Wow, how cultured. Marcus just dropped on this headline. Vance called off trip to Pakistan. Sorry. Oh, Jesus Christ, dude. I can't stop. I can't. I'm sorry. Bro, you're live streaming? Whatever, dude. It's what matters anymore? You know, nothing. Nothing matters. A year ago, you mocked me for saying Pakistan was going to be the table, and now look at you. Okay, it's true. I was wrong. I was wrong. As a Turk, my background forced me not to see the reality that was unfolding in front of our eyes, okay? That Pakistan was going to be the table. I, for the longest time, believed that Turkey was the table. Okay, that Turkey was at the table and Turkey was the table. I was wrong. Turkey is no longer at the table. Pakistan is now the table.
kind of mixed it. I did Pakistan.
Yep. A little bit later, we'll find out and maybe get that girl on the phone. We'll find out what's going on with you two. But President Trump is now accusing Iran of violating the ceasefire, which expires tomorrow.
Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yinks joins us live from Israel with the latest. Hey, Trey.
Yeah, hey, guys. Good morning. The ceasefire between the United
States... Oh, here we go. We got Trey on, signing live from Tel Aviv to glaze Donald Trump. Trey's going to tell us how wonderful Trump has destroyed the Iranian missile stockpiles. Everything's going great. People love it. People are celebrating it, really. It's fantastic. Here we go. Tel Aviv Trey, baby. Tel Aviv Trey. Give it to us, Trey.
And this week, the U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance and the American delegation are expected to travel to Pakistan today, going to Islamabad. State media in Iran, though, says the Iranian delegation has not yet departed for the talks. Iran parliament speaker posted to X overnight saying Trump, by imposing a siege and violating the ceasefire, seeks to turn this negotiating table in his own imagination into a table of surrender or to justify renewed warmongering. We do not accept negotiations under the shadow of threats, and in the past 2 weeks, we have prepared to reveal new cards on the battlefield. The reality is that Iran has violated the ceasefire multiple times, specifically in the Strait of Hormuz, where only 16 vessels passed through on Monday. President Trump has indicated he's unlikely to extend the ceasefire, saying this overnight.
Frankly, everyone is. They don't talk about it, but you can't let Iran have a nuclear weapon. You want to see a stock market get hit. You cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon, and they'll use it here. They'll take out the Middle East. They'll knock out Israel in the Middle East. And they'll come to Europe and they'll come here because they are, let's say, ill, if very ill, and we can't let that happen.
The president also posted a number of times to Truth Social saying, in part, Israel never talked me into the war with Iran. The results of October 7th added to my lifelong opinion that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon. The Israelis agree with that position and have indicated they are prepared if the war resumes. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying this at a Memorial Day ceremony late Monday.
Our flag is planted from the depths of the Gaza Strip to the crown of Mount Hermon, and our pilots control the skies of the region as definitive proof of our superiority over the Iranian Axis. We have not yet finished the work, but the world is already recognizing our determination to defend ourselves, and not only ourselves, but to defend humanity from barbaric fanaticism.
President Trump posting to Truth Social that Iran has violated the ceasefire numerous times. This is true not just in the Strait of Hormuz, but remember, in the early hours of this agreement, they were still launching ballistic missiles at Israel and Gulf countries. Guys?
Hey, Trey, could you give me an idea? Are we letting ships through? Because we're seeing different reports. First, nobody's getting through. Then we boarded a ship that tried to get through. Do you have any reporting that talks about what's really happening in the Strait?
Yeah, the United States is allowing any vessels who are passing through this area to make their way to their final destination as long as they're not coming from Iranian ports. There were some reports overnight indicating that 26 vessels from Iran's shadow fleet were able to make it past the U.S. blockade. There is no evidence of that, and despite what one Democratic senator talked about, there is a concerted effort by the United States to ensure that any vessels that are coming from Iranian ports are turned around or seized, as we saw with that one cargo ship over the weekend.
So, Trey, that was just Iranian propaganda, right?
Yes, absolutely. And the shadow fleet that the senator is talking about is used to directly fund Iranian proxies across the Middle East, including Hamas, the Houthis, and Hezbollah, who are directly responsible for killing U.S. citizens. And so the shadow fleet is a very serious problem. It is not getting past the U.S. blockade, according to all reports and information that we have from the region. But it is a very serious issue that the U.S. Navy says they will crack down on, not just in the Persian Gulf, but also around the world, including in the Indo-Pacific.
All right. Thanks so much.
That's what I'm talking about. Rooting against the country.
Who is it?
What's the
Senator
name of
Chris Murphy?
Chris Murphy, the one Margaritaville with the illegal alien that was in that came to this country that got deported. Yeah. No. So it's like, why are you going against the country right now in the middle of a war?
Dude, you can't do this. This is 2003 rhetoric in 2026. It doesn't fucking work, okay? Because we don't have 2003 economy. We don't have the 2003 economy. We don't have the almost religious fervor in the post 9/11 anger and resentment that demanded blood, demanded revenge. We don't have any of those things. As a matter of fact, we're living in the aftermath of all of that. We're living 20 years after that. We know what it looked like when we engaged in action, when we reacted to 9/11, and most people do not have a positive view over the global war on terror in the United States of America. So to try to whip up this, like, you got to support the troops, when the overwhelming majority of Americans are like, why the fuck are we putting troops in the line of fire? This is so stupid. Like, and it's only leading to my gas prices going up. You can't do this whole like, oh, if you disagree with the war effort, you must disagree with every single troop. You're spitting on the face of the troops. Like, it doesn't work that way. Not even 2003 stockpiles. Oh, hell no. Don't even do that to me. The first round of the U.S.-Iran war drained significant numbers of exquisite munitions on top of those already spent last year defending Israel from ballistic missile attacks. Another round would presumably drain them down to a point where conventional deterrence is nullified for years. Oh my God. Oh my God. I mean, what do you say? What do you say to this? All right, fuck it. You know, have fun, I guess. What can I say? According to CSIS numbers, over the last 7 weeks of war, the U.S. military has expended most of its stockpile of precision strike missiles, at least half of its inventory of THAAD missiles, and around half of the SM-3 Patriot interceptor stockpile. Oh my Lord, dude. Oh my fucking Lord. This is what I've been saying. And the IRGC says missiles are ready for launch. The U.S. military has significantly depleted a stockpile of key missiles during the war with Iran and created a near-term risk of running out of ammunition in a future conflict should one arise in the next few years, according to experts and 3 people familiar with recent internal Defense Department stockpile assessments. Now, listen, they're talking about should a war arise in the near future. They're not, which means like if a war starts or restarts right now, it's fucked. It's unbelievably fucked. And by the way, it is fucked. Just so you understand, it's totally fucked. Hey, guess what, by the way? Remember, if you criticize this, you're anti-Semitic because you have to remind yourself, what is all of this for? And then you have to think, oh, it's for Benjamin Netanyahu, who I love and admire and is the best guy. He's the best guy. He's the guy in my heart, okay? He leads the only democracy in the world, not just in the region, in the world, honestly, the only honest democracy. No one has ever had an honest democracy. Em Israel Chai. Wonderful that we're doing all this. It is what it is. You just gotta live with that. You gotta live with that. When you're paying extra at the pump, just remind yourself that, like, if you have any negative associations with the nation state of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu and the like, remind yourself that you are being deeply anti-Semitic and just like slap yourself in the face a couple times so you forget those bad thoughts. Okay? No bad thoughts. No bad thoughts. Only good thoughts. Okay, Israel is now a superpower. That's what Benjamin Netanyahu is saying. So if you're wondering, like, what was all of this for? Well, remember, it's so that Israel gets to achieve its strategic objectives of developing the Greater Israel Project. And that's a good thing. And if you think that's insane, well, then you're bad. You're bad. And the media will yell at you every fucking day. The media will take all of your choice quotes and fucking constantly talk about how dangerous you are, how dangerous of an anti-Semite you are. Okay? That's the reality that we're living in. Over the last 7 weeks of war, the U.S. military has expended at least 45% of its stockpile of precision strike missiles, at least half of its inventory of THAAD missiles, which are designed to intercept ballistic missiles, and nearly 50% of its stockpile of Patriot air defense interceptor missiles. Whew. According to a new analysis conducted by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, CSIS, those numbers closely align with the classified Pentagon data about U.S. stockpiles, according to the source familiar with the assessment. Earlier this year, the Pentagon signed a series of contracts that would help expand missile production, but the delivery timeline to replace these systems is 3 to 5 years, even with the increased capacity, the CSIS experts and the sources said. In the short term, the U.S. likely maintains enough bombs and missiles to continue combat operations against Iran in any scenario should the shaky ceasefire fail to hold. But the number of critical munitions remaining in the U.S. stockpiles is no longer sufficient to confront a near-peer adversary like China, and it will likely take years before the inventory of those weapons return to pre-war levels, CSIS analysis concludes. The high munitions expenditures have created a window of increased vulnerability in the Western Pacific. Mark Kankian, a retired U.S. Marine Corps colonel and one of the authors of the CSIS report, told CNN it will take 1 to 4 years to replenish these inventories and several years after that to expand them to where they need to be. Let's watch the CNN report on the critical missile shortage.
Learned that the U.S. military has significantly depleted its stockpile of key missiles during the war with Iran. And according to experts, this reduction is so severe it has created a near-term risk of the U.S. running out of ammunition should a future conflict arise in the next...
You know who also said this exact same thing was going to happen if we go to war with Iran? Motherfucking Raisin Cain, dude. Trump's beautiful general from Central Casting. He did. He said this. He said this exact same thing so many times that seemingly fell on deaf ears in the rooms that, you know, Trump was in, that he went to the media and also leaked it. He did. General Dan Raisin Cain. He said it.
Few years. CNN's Natasha Bertrand is with us now with her reporting on this. It's some new reporting here. Natasha, walk us through what you've learned.
Yeah, Brianna, so according to this new study by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, which was, their findings were confirmed by 3 sources familiar with recent Pentagon assessments of U.S. stockpiles, the U.S. is running dangerously low on some of these key munitions that would be required to confront a near-peer adversary in the short term, like China, for example. So while the U.S. does still have sufficient munitions to continue bombing Iran, for example, if the shaky ceasefire were to fall fall apart, if they were to need to confront an adversary like China or like Russia, for example, then that could pose significant problems for the United States. Now, just to give you an example of how much the U.S. stockpile has been depleted over the last 7+ weeks of war on Iran, according to this assessment and the sources that we spoke to, the U.S. military has expended at least 45% of its stockpile of precision strike missiles, at least half of its inventory of THAAD missiles, which are designed to intercept ballistic missiles, and nearly 50% of its stockpile of Patriot air defense interceptor missiles, which are, of course, very key air defense munitions. Now, the U.S. military has also expended approximately 30% of its Tomahawk missiles stockpile, which are those long-range munitions that are really key to attacking targets further away. More than 20% of its stockpile of long-range joint air-to-surface standoff missiles, and approximately 20% of its SM-3 and SM-6 missiles. Now, this is important because these munitions take a while to be replaced. And according to our sources and this analysis, it would take anywhere between 1 to 6 years to replace a lot of these munitions. And so this is a really big problem that we should note that the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Dan Kane, he actually warned about as the administration was preparing to potentially go to war with Iran. He was raising concerns, we're told, about this issue of depleted stockpiles around the world, particularly ones that could be very useful to U.S. allies like Israel and Ukraine. So the Pentagon is preparing to ask for a supplemental from Congress.
Always funny how the near-peer assessment of China never mentions mobilization tempo. Like, they can't even move at a pace that the U.S. could ever match at the event of a prolonged conflict. Yeah, near-peer also doesn't make the calculation that China could just like shut off the faucet of raw materials necessary for manufacturing these missile systems. So that assessment, weirdly enough, is never a part of the calculation, because that's the real that is the real problem here, is that if China just slaps on export controls on key materials necessary for missile production for American national security, which they have entertained in the past, it's fucking over. It's literally over. It's never been more over than it is right now. There is no way for America to design a contingency plan around that procurement strategy, because China has almost a complete monopoly on the manufacturing, the procurement and the refinement of rare earth minerals, magnets and the like, that are necessary for missile production. Now, of course, China won't do that. They love trade. They will fucking die if they don't do trade. Here, I'll tell it to you like this. I'll give you a burger analogy. Imagine a world where all the cows are in China. All the cows are being processed in China, and there are very few cows that exist elsewhere, other than the markets that China has, complete control over. Now, Americans have this unbelievable appetite for burgers. And they're consuming so many burgers, okay? They're eating burgers like crazy, like there's no tomorrow. All of a sudden, China says, hey, we're no longer giving you, we love the burgers, we're consuming the burgers ourselves, we're no longer going to give you the cows to make the burgers. No more burger for America, okay? I didn't want to scare you guys, but that's kind of the reality that we're facing currently, okay? Yeah, imagine a hamburger. Thank God I finally get it now. Yeah.
For additional funding to try to replace these munitions, but it could still take quite some time before those are actually back in U.S. stockpiles, Brianna.
All right. Thank you, Natasha, for the reporting. Boris?
Joining us now to discuss this and more regarding the war with Iran is retired Army Major Harrison Mann. He's a former Defense Intelligence Agency official, also the Associate Campaigns Director for Win Without War. Major, thanks so much for being with us. When you hear that report, how much do these shortages concern you?
They concern me, and for more reasons just than running out of ammo fighting Iran. Part of this is a math problem that we knew the answer for before this war started, right? We knew what our stockpiles were, and I used to work with the folks at the Defense Intelligence Agency who used to do their best to count how many missiles and drones Iran had. And so, there's really two things that I want to draw out of here. One is that the folks, politicians and experts who were advocating for war with Iran, they were just kind of detached from reality. We've run out of up to 50% of strategic defensive interceptors a month into a war with a regional power, right? This is Iran. And from that, we also got to kind of extrapolate folks who are advocating for war with China. That is a global power. The fact that we are totally unprepared for these conflicts is not an argument for us to gear up for war, but it should make us a little more introspective when we have people saying it's going to be a slam dunk and we really need to fight these wars. The other thing I want to pull out of this, I think, you could be watching this report about us running out of all these critical munitions and say, well, wait a minute, don't we have the most powerful military in the world?
Trump on Truth Social, based on the fact that the government of Iran is seriously fractured, not unexpectedly so, and upon the request of Field Marshal Asim Munir, the Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif of Pakistan, Zindabad, we have been asked to hold our attack on the country of Iran until such time as their leaders and representatives can come up with a unified proposal. I have therefore directed our military to continue the blockade and, in all other respects, remain ready and able, and will therefore extend the ceasefire until such time as their proposal is submitted and discussions are concluded one way or another. What happened? Dude, every time Donald Trump pulls away from military action, he presents it in a way where he's like, it's because they're so weak. It would be bad. It would look bad if we just hit our enemy in their weakest moment. Okay. It's so funny. Another Tuesday, another Taco Tuesday. Okay. Now, of course, the problem here is still the continued blockade. He'd rather explode than be seen as weak. It's pathological. Yeah, I think this is turning into Trita Parsi's assessment a little bit. I still think there's perfidy at play here. Mike Huckabee has been recalled to the United States. That's interesting, at least. And also, you have of troop activity leading up to this moment. So who knows what he does? Wait, please explain. So China wants to produce material for bombs that could potentially be directed towards China, huh? Please explain. Oh my God. We taught the average person how international trade works, and they wanted to, their mind exploded instantaneously. Brother or sister or the emperor, that is what's going on right now. That's why it's really funny when America's like, we hate China. We have to go to war with China. It's like every single missile component touches Chinese hands at a certain point. Okay. This is just how it works. This is how international trade works. China is a unbelievably important, if not the most important part of the supply chain. So yes, on the one hand, you hear Americans endlessly talk about how China is a real threat, a real danger to America. On the other hand, China has, for years and years, been a manufacturing base that creates the materials that are necessary for missile production. China is the manufacturing base of the entire planet. Yes, vice versa. China uses USA chips in their weapons too. Like, there is this very strange design that we have over international trade that does not correspond to the way that we talk about China. Now, of course, China doesn't talk about us in the same way that we talk about China. Let's be real. If we're being totally honest here, they don't talk about us like the way we talk about them. But we have this very belligerent attitude. China recognizes the interdependency that they have with us. We, if we're being honest, recognize it as well, but we talk like we don't recognize it. But then again, that inconsistency is perhaps best demonstrated by the way that Trump moves on the timeline. On the one hand, sober minds recognize that Iran still maintains all the leverage by controlling the Strait of Hormuz. Donald Trump needs to open the Strait of Hormuz, and instead he has decided to add a second blockade to the Strait of Hormuz, making it seem as though America has the upper hand in these conversations. Behind closed doors, they're begging the Iranians to get to the ceasefire table and negotiate with the Americans. But in public, they're doing this. They're doing a whole lot of this.
Don't we have the biggest military in the world? We just spent nearly $1 trillion on the Pentagon last year. Why don't we have enough ammo? And I think it's important for folks to understand, especially as we move into talking about supplemental funding or a new defense funding bill, that these hundreds of billions of dollars that Congress gives the president for war largely do not go into things that we would say we need for war. The reason that we don't have enough air defense interceptors is because instead we've been spending that money on like these big projects that are kind of designed to be expensive. I hate to describe it this way, but a lot of this $900 billion budget, and that's what Congress passed last year, nearly every Republican and over 50% of Democrats too, kind of becomes a slush fund for defense contractors. Raytheon, Lockheed, and instead of producing the defensive capabilities that you say we might need, instead of doing things like paying to get black mold out of the soldiers' barracks, instead of going towards getting better bomb shelters for the hundreds of U.S. troops who've been wounded in this war, we're building big vanity projects like the F-35 stealth fighter, which we learned pretty early on in this war is not that stealthy. Iran caught it on camera and shot at it, or like Ford-class aircraft carriers that the toilets don't work on. And so I think it's really important to understand if you see these numbers and are shocked or worried by them, more money is not the answer. More judicious spending is.
There's also an aspect to this, specifically when it comes to Iran, and I'll get to China in a moment, but financially it's asymmetrical, right? I've heard some experts describing the U.S. weaponry as a Ferrari out in the skies over Tehran, and the Iranians essentially shooting like a razor scooter at a Ferrari. It's way less expensive for them to take out the U.S. and Israel's equipment than the inverse. How does the U.S. make that more efficient? Does it need to adjust toward a more Ukrainian-like model?
So this is another reflection of our misguided priorities, I would say. Drone proliferation in the Middle East has been a threat for at least a decade. We saw them popping up in the Syrian civil war, and Iran has been a leader in this field. As you mentioned, Ukrainians, out of necessity, figured out much, much cheaper ways to deal with this threat. Why haven't we invested in them? Again, these are because of decisions that Congress and successive military leadership made.
U.S., and I mean this, will never be able to engage in the same efficient procurement strategies of the Ukrainian or the Iranian drone manufacturing industry. And there's one reason for that, and especially for Iran, but even this is also the case with Ukraine as well, to a lesser degree. The reason is because of why our defense industry exists. The Iranian defense industry exists out of necessity. It is for survival. It is for sovereignty. Okay, it's not because America doesn't have the industrial base to do this. Of course we do. I mean, look at China. The reason why is because our military industrial complex does not exist for national security. It exists for profit. The Ukrainian drone industry was built out of necessity. Now, it's still very westernized, and therefore there is an element of profit seeking in that one as well, but it's still ultimately built out of necessity. Okay? And it is especially the case for Iran. Iran's defense sector is not designed for profit. It is designed for survival. That's it. That's it. It's that simple. And that's precisely the reason why we take the Iranian Shahed drones that are made for like, I believe, $7,000 to $10,000 a pop, the cheapest versions of the Shahed drones, which is basically like a lawnmower with explosive ordnance attached to it, right? Very cheap and very reliable. And our version of that, which is the Lucas, is like $30,000 a piece. So even when we just take the Iranian invention and basically slap made in the USA, a made in the USA sticker on it, it's still infinitely more costly. Sometimes, twice, sometimes 4 times, 5 times the price. And the reason for that is because American manufacturing is not designed around survivability, is not designed around necessity. It's designed around contractor bloat. It's designed around endless profit seeking. It's that simple. And that's why in a situation where you're going toe-to-toe with a country that is capable of waging asymmetric war and a country that is willing to absorb a lot of the costs because it's had to absorb a lot of the costs due to the sanctions regime that we implemented for many, many years, they have a lot more leverage. It's a lot cheaper for them to maintain control over this key choke point for trade, for international trade. and they can just withstand us in a game of attrition. The U.S. defense industry is like the last pillar of our domestic industrial investment, and it's used as a way to pour money into the economy via bloat. And for greed, of course, it is incredibly inefficient, and we get so much less per dollar than many other countries do. Yes, but it's also important to understand that when I say defense bloat, or when we talk about like why we spend so much money, that is a much more favorable attitude about what the defense industry exists for. It's true that this is the last line of like good, in air quotes, good jobs, reliable jobs, aside from like fracking. However, even in that field, much of the money, much of the unlimited expenditures still goes back to financial engineering in the same exact way that all of these companies are no longer companies that manufacture goods and try to make the most reliable good you possibly could have, but instead, all these companies have turned into banks. This is the same for Lockheed Martin. It's the same for Boeing. It's the same for Northrop Grumman. These companies are all banks now, okay? That is the problem. Capitalism has made the United States of America and its imperial war machine, which is a necessity for capitalism to continue, into a much weaker, much more overextended behemoth. In some ways, this is a contradiction working itself out. Not very good ones. I keep asking my local branch for loans and they just tackle me when I walk in. I still think this might be perfidy. Jeremy Scale also seems to agree. Given that the U.S. twice attacked Iran while claiming to be negotiating, we can never rule out that the U.S. and Israel resume the war against Iran, even if talks are scheduled. This is what happened in June 2025 and February 2026. While the talks are seemingly off, that doesn't necessarily mean they're truly off. Anyway, let's get back to the American stockpiles.
War is not that stealthy. Iran caught it on camera and shot at it, or like Ford-class aircraft carriers that the toilets don't work on. And so I think it's really important to understand, if you see these numbers and are shocked or worried by them, more money is not the answer. More judicious spending is.
There's also an aspect to this, specifically when it comes to Iran, and I'll get to China in a moment, but financially it's asymmetrical, right? I've heard some experts describing the U.S. weaponry as a Ferrari out in the skies over Tehran, and the Iranians essentially...
Yes, this is true. Remember, my brother has said the Bayraktar is like the old reliable. The Bayraktar is like a Toyota Camry, whereas the American drone systems are like a Bentley or a Ferrari.
Actually shooting like a Razor scooter at a Ferrari. It's way less expensive for them to take out the U.S. and Israel's equipment than the inverse. How does the U.S. make that more efficient? Does it need to adjust toward a more Ukrainian-like model?
So this is another reflection of our misguided priorities, I would say. Drone proliferation in the Middle East has been a threat for at least a decade. We saw them popping up in the Syrian civil war, and Iran has been a leader in this field. As you mentioned, Ukrainians, out of necessity, figured out much, much cheaper ways to deal with this threat. Why haven't we invested in them? Again, these are because of decisions that Congress and successive military leadership made. And it's really unfortunate, because how did the first U.S. troops die in this conflict? It was a drone strike.
Yeah. I did want to get your thoughts on China, because this morning President Trump said the U.S. intercepted a ship that had, quote, a gift from China. This is notable because as the president is saying that he was sort of surprised.
Trump speculates is crazy. Brother, that's the president. What do you mean? I like that the president is so unreliable that when he makes a statement, and this is a pretty significant statement, he's basically, Trump is basically saying China was sending weapons to Iran and we intercepted it, right? But because he is so unreliable as a narrator, that even American news has to be like, it's speculation.
By this, we talked about last week the letters exchanged between he and President Xi of China, in which Xi effectively promised Trump that that China would not be supplying ammunition to Tehran. Do you think a shipment of arms from China could have gotten sent to Iran without Xi knowing, without Beijing being aware of what was being transported to Iran?
I don't think that would be possible, but we also have to note that the accusation here is a dual-use system.
I see.
So that could be electronics. It doesn't necessarily mean they sent them missiles. A lot of Iran's missiles and drones do depend on electronics, circuit board stuff that they can't manufacture domestically. So this could have been something routine, or it could have been China testing the waters and trying to keep the Iranian war effort going. It's hard to be sure right now.
Major Harrison Mann, thank you so much for the perspective. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Well, and you heard Pete Hegseth. He said this at every single press conference. He says, when you read some of these headlines from a lot of the media, the legacy media, whose side are you on? Because I'm under the impression you're under the side of Iran and not America. You're rooting for Iran.
So Senator Chris Murphy everything he says is so against this president. It's really against the country. Every time Senator Schumer talks on the floor, talks about things that he thinks are going wrong with the war. He preferred the JCPOA, which he didn't vote for, and we have that soundbite. But Chris Murphy is probably the worst. Sees himself as a presidential candidate, but now cheering for Iranian propaganda, hoping it's true. And here it is. The original post. At least 26 Iranian shadow fleet vessels bypass U.S. blockade. Senator Chris Murphy retweets. Awesome.
Wow.
So that's the senator from Connecticut. Now, obviously, you shouldn't be rooting for this anyway, right? That's the first thing. But number two is, it's clearly Iranian propaganda as well. So he's cheering for it, and then the information is still even not even true. He gets briefed on this type of stuff. He could make a phone call to the White House or get briefed by the Pentagon about this information.
He's hoping it's true.
Apparently, China's president did make a call with the Saudi crown prince, and this is what he said to him. The Strait of Hormuz should remain open to normal passage, as this serves the common interests of regional countries and the international community.
No joke. Hey, President Xi, snap out of it. It is Iran who you finance, support, and arm up and buy their oil, 90% of it, that has shut down the strait. Why are you calling Saudi Arabia saying open up the strait? Also, they're the ones who got to redirect all the oil around the strait.
Also, why would the Saudis reopen it after Iran has been attacking them?
Right, but they can't. They're not in control of it.
Why would they even try to help with this negotiation when China has been silent on Iran attacking the Gulf states when they didn't even do offensive measures?
The Gulf states should turn the screws on Iran and say, if you want to do business with us, stop on China. Stop doing business with Iran. These shouldn't be friendly calls. And China is the wild card here. If China says, I need oil from Iran, and now any Iranian ship cannot deliver oil, they're the ones who should turn around and say, Iran, open up the strait. That's the theory. And even though they have some oil in reserve, this is straining their economy.
Yeah, don't forget, this is just Iranian ports. This is not allowing their ships to allow them to transport oil to other countries. We're not allowing any of their ships or their vessels to go through the Strait of Hormuz if they came from one of their ports. It's open to everybody else.
Yep. Robert Levinson's son joined me earlier. Now, Robert Levinson, if you don't remember, is a CIA agent that was picked up on Kish Island 20 years ago. And they've been trying to find out what happened to him. And they've been going multiple times to Iran. And these people are evil personified. They take hostages. They torture the hostages. They ask for ransom back. People like President Biden actually give them money for people. But Levinson, there's so much mystery wrapped around it. So I asked him how he feels about this. And he also said what makes it doubly hard is Iran's ambassador to Pakistan is the one who kidnapped his father. And he's got a diplomatic position, prestigious in that world in Pakistan. And he's negotiating on this peace deal with us. Watch.
There's only a few people in the world who know exactly what happened to my dad, who were involved in what happened to my dad. The FBI identified 5 of them. One of them was killed in the initial airstrikes at the start of this conflict. And another one is hiding in plain sight. He's right out there. He was at these talks, helping coordinate things. And it's a slap in the face to our family, slap in the face to the United States of America, because I don't know what the heck he's doing over there. And that Pakistanis allowed this. It hurts their credibility as an independent intermediary between the two countries.
You're right, man. We shouldn't negotiate with foreign adversaries. Sorry, it makes you mad. Got it. Like, what do you mean? What is this? They don't understand sarcasm. You had to come out and say it was sarcasm. Oh yeah, I do take a lot of pleasure in seeing even someone like Chris Murphy having to experience the same type of cynical outrage manufacturing. that I have to withstand with regular frequency, you know? Yeah, it's very funny. Chris Murphy was like very obviously being sarcastic, but you're not allowed to do sarcasm, clearly. You know, to that I say,
legalize comedy.
yeah. Anyway, I don't care about what this guy is complaining about.